Good evening and welcome to 1010, your top 10 news in 10 minutes. I'm Andy Hong. We're already staring right down the barrel of all the subject tests and AP tests as we approach May. So may the force be with you. But it's okay, I'll show myself out. So anyways, with the tests and the studies and all that jazz, 1010 is going to have a little break for the time being. As you know, this is a 100% student-run group, and believe it or not, students need to study to do well on tests. It's like direct variation. So with that breaking news, let's start with the top 10 news of the week. In Nepal, the deadliest earthquake in over 80 years claimed more than 1,000 lives. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake occurred between the cities of Kathmandu, the capital, and Pokhara, a neighboring city in central Nepal. Official Nepalese estimates of the death toll is around 1,500, but the information minister had told BBC that the numbers will be higher. There have also been reports of avalanches in the nearby Himalayas as far as Mount Everest, where at least 15 people in both the Nepalese and the Tibetan sides were killed. Indian, Pakistani, American, and various European governments have offered aid and are sending in rescue teams and humanitarian aid as we speak. Nepal had always existed in the shadow of the Himalayan mountain chain, which is the result of the Eurasian plate and the Indo-Australian plate colliding and pushing up the landmass. Even so, much of the country's infrastructure wasn't built to survive such earthquakes. As a result, hundreds are feared to be trapped under the collapsed houses and buildings. Even historical buildings that survived the 1934 quake, which killed 8,500, were destroyed in this quake. President Theodore Roosevelt always emphasized gunboat diplomacy, wherein the United States should speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, the nuclear aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt showed us all how it's done by sailing into the Persian Gulf to support the American fleet countering a convoy of Iranian ships. While Saudi Arabia bombed the rebels from the air, Iran had been supporting the rebels by sea, an action that the United States sought to block off. Fortunately, tensions seem to have de-escalated for the past months, and there were no openly hostile confrontations in the Gulf. Still, the proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran in Yemen continues. Back in the United States, another incident of police brutality and incompetence started a fresh round of protests and debates. Freddie Gray died in Baltimore police custody after being mishandled despite his broken neck. Released videos show the man pleading for help and constantly being ignored as he was dragged to the police van. Newly released information outlined the details of the mistreatment. The officers drove the injured man around for 30 minutes, taking him out on the van, placing him on leg irons, picking him up the floor, and propping him into a seat. It's not surprising that Gray wasn't breathing upon arrival at the station. Full results of the investigation are to be released by next Friday. Another case of police brutality sparked a new corruption debate. Robert Bates, the 73-year-old reserve deputy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was first brought to the national spotlight when he accidentally shot suspect Eric Harris in a high-level sting operation. There was public outcry over the brutal mishandling of the shot suspect, who later died. But many people got around to questioning as to why an elderly deputy who served in the force for just 1 year in the 1960s ever got around to becoming a reserve deputy and participating in a sting operation. Bates' lawyer released the training documents, which show that Bates was completely qualified for the job. On the other hand, other accounts showing colleagues concerned about Bates' performance and his close ties with the sheriff seem to indicate that Bates received special treatment to reach that position. The department is, according to CBS, preparing a statement on those allegations. We reported last week that Saudi Arabia had executed 2 Indonesians despite protests from the Indonesian government. Soon after the 2 maids were killed, many Indonesians pushed for the executions of their own foreigners in their death row, and the government agreed. 2 Australians and 1 Filipino have received notices of their imminent execution for drug smuggling. The 2 Australians are part of the infamous Bali 9, the 8 men and 1 woman who were arrested in 2005 for trying to smuggle over 8 kilograms or 18 pounds of cocaine into Australia. The Filipino woman was arrested for a separate drug smuggling case in 2010. Indonesian law requires convicts to receive a 72-hour warning before being executed, so things might get really ugly really quickly for them. And speaking of sour foreign relations, let's talk about the Armenian according to the Turks, there was never a genocide. Yesterday did mark the 100th anniversary of the systematic killing of 1.5 million Armenians in the hands of the Ottoman Empire. which many ethnic Armenians and their supporters recognize. The Turks, however, dispute the death toll by putting it at 300,000 and blames the deaths on the fog of war during the First World War. It is true, however, that there has always been some degree of discrimination against Armenians in Turkey even to today. According to CNN, a growing number of scholars and world leaders believe that what happened should be called genocide. Germany looks set to join the European Parliament, France, Austria, Canada, and some 20 other countries in labeling the atrocity a genocide. As a result, it might be easy to say that the Turkish side of the story is a sorry excuse to cover up the genocide. But when 95% of Turkey and the governments of the United Kingdom and Israel agree with the non-genocidal account, it's a bit hard to lean completely to one side. Many world leaders, including President Obama, still are wary of using the word genocide for fear of offending the intense national pride of the Turks, especially since Turkey is one of the main Western allies in the border between Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Maybe in another 100 years, all of us will be able to know the truth behind what actually happened. And a moment we've all been waiting for, the final clinical trials have begun for the first child malaria vaccine. Although the vaccine has only been 46% effective for children between the ages of 5 and 17 months, it is a major milestone in the war against malaria, which kills 1,300 children every day in sub-Saharan Africa. This vaccine is a result of over 20 years of work. Even though it was a disappointment, it is an important stepping stone for the more effective vaccines in the future. And no, this is not an excuse for you anti-vaxxers to refuse basic vaccinations. Sheesh. Just to get you even more depressed ahead of AP testing, because we all need that, Rose McGrath, a 12-year-old Michigan girl, was dismissed from her middle school after making it through leukemia. After nearly 3 years of cancer treatment, St. Joseph Middle School sent the family a letter regarding concerns over, according to CBS, her attendance and academic performance, and stated that Rose had been dismissed from the school. The school defended their action by citing that she only showed up for 32 days this past school year. You know, some people just want to watch the world burn. Oh, and I meant to ask my brother sometime about this, but apparently there have been a drastic increase in coyote sightings in New York City. And no, I'm not talking about the late 90s, early 2000s Korean pop singer group Coyote. I mean the real canine mammal native to North America that eats rabbits and rodents and is spelled with a C, not a K. One female coyote was captured today in the Battery Park neighborhood in southern Manhattan this morning. No animal or human, fortunately, was hurt in the process. With the recent giant Calbuco volcano eruption in Chile and with the heavy seismic activity in subcontinental Asia, I think this is a good week to have this week's science news about underwater seismic activity. 70% of the world's volcanic eruptions occur underwater, and most of it goes undetected. Consider the constant eruptions in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, where the Atlantic seabed spreads apart. The only direct observation of the action is conducted in Iceland, the only portion of the 16,000-kilometer or 10,000-mile long ridge that is above sea level. The glorious 1080p HD video you are seeing in the top corner is from a 2009 eruption of the West Mata volcano near the Pacific island of Samoa, courtesy of the National Scientific Foundation and the NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. By observing and recording the eruptions for 20 months, 1.2 kilometers or 4,000 feet below the sea level, scientists managed to come up with sound signatures for each eruption, making the classification of such eruptions much easier. Also, they gave us this epic footage, which can only be topped by this video of the 2014 eruption of the Tavurvur volcano in Papua New Guinea. And that was the Ten10 news for this week. I'm Andy Hong. Make sure to do well on your tests, and if this applies to you, even the SPAC. I'm sorry. Oh, Common Core, you're so funny. Also, like us on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll see you later when we come back with more of your top 10 news of the week. Stay educated.